The girl was crawling through the dry weeds, her torn dress soaked with sweat and dust, her breath breaking into tiny sobs, her right hand pressed against her hip where the snake had struck. The air smelled of creosote and death, like the valley itself was warning her. The flesh there had swollen into a dark, angry mound. Each movement sent a scream through her body. She whispered to herself, "Don't die here. Liza, not like this." The sun above Skull Valley burned like hellfire, and the flies gathered around the blood on her skin. Abel Hart had just buried his wife 3 hours earlier. The soil over her coffin was still wet. He had dug it himself, with the same hands that once built her a home. Cholera had taken her fast, so fast he still expected to hear her humming by the window when he returned. But now, there was only the wind and the ache that lived behind his ribs. He was riding home when he saw the girl collapse at the edge of the pines near Thumb Butte. At first, he thought she was a ghost. Her skin looked gray under the afternoon light, her eyes half open. When he knelt beside her, the smell of venom and blood hit him. She looked at him and gasped. "That spot. It's really swollen." "Suck out the venom, please," her voice cracked, desperate, almost gone. Abel's hands froze above her wound. He knew what the old ranchers used to do, but something stopped him. He lifted the torn cloth carefully. Back in the war, they taught us, sucking only works in the first minute and spreads the poison if you got cuts in your mouth. What he saw underneath turned his stomach. Beneath the swollen bite were layers of old bruises, purple and yellow, some round like belt buckles, some thin like whip marks. He didn't see just the snake's bite. He saw years of pain carved into her body by another man's hand. She shivered when the wind touched her. "He kicked me out," she whispered. "Said I was bad luck. Said the devil cursed me." Her words faded like smoke. Abel took off his bandana, pressed it to her wound, and lifted her into his arms. The heat from her skin burned through his shirt. He didn't know if it was the venom or a fever, maybe both. As he carried her back toward his horse, the ground blurred with heat waves. Every step echoed in his chest like a heartbeat that wasn't his. For the first time since his wife's death, something in him stirred. Not love, not yet, but a spark of duty, a will to save someone when he couldn't save the one he loved. He laid her across his saddle and looked toward the endless road back to his ranch. The air smelled of pine and death. He didn't know who she was or what had brought her to this cursed valley, but as her fingers twitched and grabbed his sleeve, he knew this encounter wasn't chance. Was she sent to heal his grief or to reopen a wound he wasn't ready to face? The sun baked the valley that day, hot enough to make the air shimmer above the dirt road. Inside the ranch house, the smell of dust and medicine mixed with the faint scent of coffee. Abel sat by the window, rolling his wedding ring between his fingers, staring out at the empty corral. From the small room behind him came a soft sound, like someone trying to breathe without being heard. Liza was awake. He stepped inside and found her struggling to sit up. Sweat clung to her forehead and her hands trembled as she tried to pull the blanket higher. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "You need rest." Her eyes moved over the room, the plain wooden walls, the old hat on the hook, the clean water in the basin. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Since my wife passed." Liza lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry." Abel nodded. Saying nothing more, he handed her a cup of water, and their fingers brushed. Just a second, but it was enough for her heart to jolt. No man had ever looked at her the way Abel did, without anger, without hunger, just quiet kindness. By the second evening, she could walk a few steps. She followed him outside and watched as he repaired the corral fence, sweat running down his neck. The sun painted everything gold, even the sadness in his eyes. Something about him felt solid, like the land itself. She caught herself smiling for the first time in months. When he turned and saw her standing there, barefoot in the dirt, he almost smiled back. "You should be resting," he said. "Resting makes me think too much," she whispered. That night, as crickets filled the valley with sound, Liza couldn't sleep. Every time the wind rattled the shutters, she flinched. She kept seeing Jeb's face, the way his eyes turned black when he was angry. She knew him well enough to know he wouldn't just let her go. He'd come. He always did. Abel found her sitting on the porch, clutching a thin blanket around her shoulders. "You're shaking," he said softly. He always smells me out, like a hound on blood. Abel's jaw tightened. Then he'll find me first. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the night filled the space between them. The moonlight cut across her face, showing fear and something else, admiration. She had never seen a man stand so calm, so sure. When danger was coming, Liza looked at him, her voice barely a breath. You don't even know me. Why would you care? Abel turned his eyes toward the dark hills, 'cause no one should live scared. She wanted to believe him, but deep down she knew fear had a way of finding you, no matter where you ran. And that very night, under the same moonlight, a distant rider stopped at the old well outside the valley. He was looking for her. Late afternoon settled over Skull Valley, the kind of heat that makes the horizon shimmer like water. Liza was hanging clothes on the line behind the ranch, her hip still tender but healing. Abel was out by the barn, fixing the gate when he heard it, the sound of hooves coming fast down the dusty road. He froze, his hand tightening around the hammer. Liza turned toward the sound, her face losing all color. It's him, she whispered. The rider pulled up hard, dust rolling around the horse's legs. Jeb Monroe swung down, his shirt open, eyes wild, the smell of whiskey carrying before he spoke. You think you can hide her? Old man, he shouted. Abel stepped forward slow, steady. You best keep your voice down. She's hurt, and you're not welcome here. Jeb laughed, a mean kind of laugh that comes from deep hate. She's my wife. I'll take her where I please. He grabbed Liza by the arm before she could move. She cried out, pulling back, but his grip was like iron. Abel reached them in 3 long strides. His hand caught Jeb's wrist, twisting it until the man dropped his hold. You lay another hand on her, and I'll bury you right next to my wife's grave. Jeb swung a fist, clumsy with rage. Abel blocked it, then hit him square across the jaw. The crack echoed off the barn wall. The younger man stumbled, spat blood, and came again, but Abel didn't back down. He'd fought worse than this in his life. Hunger, sickness, loss, and he wasn't about to lose this fight. Liza stood frozen, tears and dust streaking her face. She had never seen a man fight for her, not like this. When Jeb finally hit the ground, Abel stepped back, breathing heavy, but his voice was calm. Get on your horse and go. Don't come back for a second. Jeb just lay there, hate burning in his eyes. Then he climbed onto his horse, spat into the dirt, and rode off toward the hills. Abel turned to Liza. You all right? She nodded, still shaking. He won't stop. Abel, he'll bring others. He always does. Abel looked past her, toward the sun dipping low behind the ridge. Then we'll be ready. That night, the sky turned red before the stars came out. Liza sat on the porch with a cup of water, watching Abel tend to the horses. She felt safe for the first time in years, yet fear still lingered in her chest. She couldn't tell if it was for Jeb's return, or for how much she'd begun to care for the man who saved her, and somewhere out there, Jeb was planning his next move. If you've been listening this far, maybe pour yourself a cup of tea and sit a little longer. Tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? And, hey, if you'd like more stories from the wild lands of the Old West, hit that subscribe button and ride with me to the next chapter. 3 days passed before the sound of trouble rolled back into Skull Valley. The summer air was thick, the kind that makes sweat cling to your neck and thoughts feel heavy. Liza had just finished washing dishes when she heard the crunch of wheels on gravel. Abel looked out the window and saw a wagon and 2 men on horseback. One of them was Jeb Monroe. The other wore the badge of a territorial deputy. Liza's hands started to shake. He brought the law, she whispered. Jeb climbed down first, grinning wide. His jaw still carried a faint bruise from Abel's punch. Afternoon, Hart. He called out, I came for my wife. The law says she belongs with me. Abel stepped out onto the porch, the boards creaking under his boots. She's not your property, Monroe. She's a person. The deputy cleared his throat. Mr. Hart, I'm just here to keep the peace. The papers show they're married. You can't hold her here against his will. She ain't pressed charges, Hart. No bruises on record, just a husband wanting his wife home. Liza stood behind the door, tears filling her eyes. Jeb's voice softened, almost kind. Come on, Liza. I'll change. I swear it. I'll treat you right this time. Abel looked at her, his face unreadable. You don't have to go, he said quietly. But Liza hesitated. Years of fear sat heavy on her shoulders. The law was never on her side, not in this land, not in this time. Slowly, she stepped forward. She clutched the little tin cross Abel had given her the night before. The only thing she took. If I go. Will you let him be? She asked the deputy. The deputy nodded. Abel's heart sank as he watched her climb into that wagon. The wheels kicked up dust that settled into the wrinkles of his hands. When the sound faded, he stood there for a long time, staring at the empty road. Days passed, nights stretched long. Then, one evening, a rider came racing through the dark. It was one of the ranch hands from town. He shouted as he jumped down from his horse. Hart, it's her. Jeb's beaten her again. Folks in Prescott heard her screams. Abel didn't say a word. He saddled his horse, grabbed his old revolver, and rode hard into the night. The hoofbeats of his own horse drowned out the ones in his chest. The desert wind cut across his face, carrying the smell of dust and blood. When he reached the miner's cabin, the door was open. Inside, Liza was on the floor, blood on her lip, eyes full of fire. Jeb turned, bottle in hand, shouting, "She's my wife this time." Liza didn't cry. She grabbed the broken bottle near her feet and raised it. "Not anymore," she said. Abel pulled her back, his voice low. "You're done here, Monroe. You're done." The next morning, word spread fast. Jeb was gone, headed out of town under threat of arrest. Liza filed for divorce with the help of the county clerk. For the first time, the law stood with her, but freedom comes with a cost. And what she and Abel would face next was something neither of them could have prepared for. 2 summers passed in Skull Valley, and the wind that once carried sorrow now carried the smell of cut hay and rain from the high country. Life on Hart Ranch found its rhythm again. The fences stood straighter. The barn roof no longer leaked, and laughter sometimes echoed across the fields when the cattle came in. Liza had changed. Her hands were rough now, her shoulders strong. She could ride better than most ranch hands and could calm even the meanest horse with a single look. Folks in town had stopped whispering about her. They saw how hard she worked and how she never looked back. The scars on her skin had faded, but the ones inside still spoke to her on quiet nights. Abel had changed too. The hollow look in his eyes was gone. He no longer carried his wife's ring in his pocket. He had learned something about grief, that it doesn't vanish. It just becomes part of you, like a shadow that walks beside you but no longer leads the way. One evening, the sky turned orange over the valley, and Liza was closing the barn door when Abel came up behind her. He had a soft smile, the kind that only comes after years of silence. "You ever think we made it through for a reason?" he asked. Liza leaned against the door, her face glowing in the last light of day. "Maybe the reason is just to prove we could," she said. They stood there in the stillness, 2 people who had lost almost everything, yet somehow found each other. There was no grand confession, no dramatic kiss, just the peace that comes when 2 broken hearts learn how to beat again, side by side. When the crickets started singing, Liza looked out at the fading sun. "Funny," she said. "I used to think life ended the day I ran from him, but maybe that was the day it really began." Abel nodded, his voice low. "Sometimes the hardest roads don't take you home. They build you a new one. The story of Abel and Liza isn't just about love. It's about surviving what tries to break you, about standing up when the world says you can't. It's about believing that even in the roughest land, a seed of kindness can still take root. So let me ask you this. Have you ever faced a season that nearly broke you? And when you look back now, can you see how far you've come? Take a breath. Let their story remind you that healing doesn't happen all at once. It comes in small steps, in quiet moments, and sometimes in the hands of someone who refuses to walk away. If you've been here, listening till the end, I thank you for sharing a few minutes of your day with me. Go ahead, give this story a like if it touched you, and subscribe so you don't miss the next ride through the Old West. Now, pour yourself a cup of tea, look out your window, and tell me what time is it where you are, and what do you see beyond that glass?